This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out. Hi, I'm Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for everything that you do to support GunGuyTV. I'm super grateful. Yes, it's a kind of a bummer day for a lot of folks. They're discouraged. They're feeling down in the dumps. The red wave wasn't quite the tsunami they were hoping for. I get it. That's okay. It's all right. There were a lot of victories there, and we're going to talk about some of them. And there were some things we get to learn so that we can have bigger victories next time. Hang in there. This whole show right now is meant to encourage and educate you and give you some information you're probably not going to get anywhere else. So I've brought Rick Travis on the show from the California Rifle and Pistol Association. We're going to talk about California, but we're also going to talk about the races around the country. And hopefully at the end, you'll leave this particular video very encouraged. So I encourage you to watch the whole thing. And oh, by the way, if you'd like to help me out and keep me able to continue doing this, you can always support me on GunGuyTV Crew. There is a link in the description. All right, let's go talk to Rick. Rick, thank you very much for getting together with me on this day after the election. I don't know about you, but I've been seeing, particularly on my social media, people crying in their beer and expressing their incredible disappointment and discouragement and so on. And I've lived long enough that I've been through a few election periods where a lot was promised and not so much delivered, or maybe a lot was delivered, but the way it's skewed in the press, you kind of feel like nothing was delivered, and it can be very discouraging. So I'm grateful that you were willing to get together with me today. Let's talk about the things that have gone well, because I suspect that a lot of folks don't realize that anything went well because of the way the media is spinning this. So I'm going to turn it over to you because you're keeping track of it. Can we first talk about what is going well or went well in California, and then we can talk about the federal stuff as well, if you like.
Yeah, I'd love to, but I wanted to address something you set up at the front. Sure. Because there's a great quote that it's actually bifurcated by Winston Churchill when he says early in his career, we need to learn from history. And then later in his career, he goes, history's taught me we never learn from history. And we always laugh when we say that. But the truth about American politics is, this is the morning after the election. So typically it's the wailing and gnashing of teeth. The comedy for those of us that work in this arena is my friends on the other side of the aisle, wailing and gnashing of teeth. Oh my God, we got our butts kicked. Oh my God, they bled us dry. And then there's the people on our side. Oh my God, there's no tomorrow. So there's that. But also as far as, nastiness, I don't think any elections beat the good old Adams-Jefferson election, because that is still stayed to this day for one of being the most brutal, over-the-top set of political campaign and metaphors. And probably a good 50% of what they said would never even be allowed in today's media. So can it get worse? Yes, Joel. That's why when people say it can't get worse, no, it's been worse.
People are totally convinced that this is the end of the world and that the country is never going to survive and so on. And I've been hearing that pretty much at the end of every election cycle for the last 60 some odd years of my life. And as a kid, I heard it and it didn't affect me, but I voted in my first election, I think, for Ronald Reagan the first time. And I voted in every election since. And so I can tell you that pretty much every election, someone, somewhere, if not an awful lot of people, are screaming that the sky is falling, the end of the world is coming. We all sound, or many of us sound like Eeyore. Oh, my tail fell off again, And I think there's a room for disappointment, but it's counterproductive to be that down in the dumps about it, when honestly, no matter what election you're in, some good things actually happen, and maybe it's better to focus on those. So those are just my thoughts. Now, if you're watching this, you can comment and tell me I'm a complete jerk. I don't know what I'm talking about. The world is coming to an end, and you know better than I do. Go ahead. That's what the comment section is for. In the meantime, Rick is going to help us out so we understand what actually has occurred. Here we go.
Yeah, so there's quite a few things to show promise in. So I'm going to start in a couple of small local elections where some things got tested out, explain kind of what the players were very quick. This is going to be, for all of you listening, this is going to be kind of me going from the 30,000 foot level to to the ground level and back up to 30,000. So I'm going to pop up and down in a couple of these elections, but I think there are some strong lessons to be learned. So one of the lessons that we have to realize is those of us who are pro Second Amendment, pro Constitution, those aren't Republican or Democrat owned policies. Those are people that literally love the Constitution, love this country. And I say that because there's a tendency sometimes to go, oh, a Republican lost, so the Second Amendment lost, as an example, Joel. But, you know, I've said many times on your show before, you can have a Democrat in the Central Valley like Adam Gray, who's extremely pro-Second Amendment, always voted for us. And there were quite a few Republicans during his term in office that didn't vote for us. So that no one party owns, quote, this space that we find ourselves in. So that's why you have to look at where the candidate is, voter guides, and that's part of my job, is to get that information out. One of the things that we had talked about a few months ago on a couple of your shows actually was the campaign strategies, the technology, how much stuff was going to cost, how much money was being poured in. Groups like Emerge California that have behind it Kamala Harris and that crowd, and how they've been trying to raise a farm team of politicians and how we needed to counter that. So we chose a community that I was close to, that I could be involved with. Of course, I'm limited in my role as a lobbyist, how involved I can be in. So most of it was observational. But I'll tell you right now, we saw a campaign in Huntington Beach where the cost per vote went from about $1 to about $15 because of the amount of money the Democrats poured in to try to flip Huntington Beach as one of the last bastions of the old Orange County Republican model. And Huntington Beach is unique as it has a charter city issue, which prevents the state from taking money from it. It means that the city attorney actually works for the people, not the city council. There's some like really strong values. Kim Carr, who's a part of Emerge California, part of Kamala Harris's group, was very much trying to topple that over the past couple of years. And so we helped 4 candidates, plus a city attorney that had just been embattled, run with a strategy of grassroots. We did not take over all the public signage, social media, everything. It was a pure old school grassroots campaign. 117 events from July 4th to yesterday. That is an incredible amount of speeches, speaking tours, did it from everything from warehouses, etc. And I'm happy to report today that despite being outspent almost 5-1, all 5 candidates came across the line victorious.
Well, and that speaks to something that I'm seeing a lot on social media right now. People being very complaining a lot about the amount of money spent. Mm-hmm. That we were so outspent here, so outspent there. And I question the validity of that argument only because as a business guy, it was I think my 30th year in business as a businessman. It's not how much money you spend, it's how well you spend it and how much bang you get for your buck. So there are different ways to campaign which may cost less but actually add more value. And I think we've seen a lot of that in this campaign season. I've seen a lot more rally type things, a lot more event type things, a lot more barnstorming, if you want to call it that, which is the old style way of getting out and going around and talking to people. A lot of money invested in door knocking and that kind of stuff, and not as much money, at least on one side, invested in traditional advertising. So it's not that money wasn't spent, it was just spent differently, and as a result, there was less money spent. But you're giving us an example of where that actually worked. Right. And we had success with it. So that's a great thing.
Yeah. And it's nothing that anybody created new. It's, the guy I learned it from actually was Tip O'Neill, who used to be Speaker of the House back when Ronald Reagan was in. And he was always like, all politics are local. If you're not knocking on people's doors, shaking people's hands, you're not going to win. And you're definitely not going to stay in power. And
well, this is the old term they used to use called a retail politician. A retail politician, I think, is somebody who goes out and does exactly that rather than somebody who just, is on television all the time.
Right. And so, and we can look to some races. There's a lot of races, too, that people have been frustrated. I had some people up here in Orange County going, oh, Katie Porter won. She beat Scott Baugh for Congress. And I'm like, A, no. And B, have you checked it out? There's less than 1,000 votes separating them. And, I want to give a couple of issues. One of the things I hear, and I'm hearing it today, it's been in a bunch of my emails. My vote doesn't count. I am so sick of that. I'm going to give two races, and I cherry pick these. One is from, down here in Southern California in Orange and Riverside County, where the district's at, the 71st. The other one's from the 7th district. These are both assembly districts. And it's really interesting to see because in the 7th, Cooley and Hoover, Cooley's a Republican. He's winning, are you ready? 343 votes. 300, and tell me your vote doesn't count when it's that way.
Okay, so my son and I were talking about this last night because we got together. He had been busier than a one-legged man at a butt-kicking contest. He hadn't had an opportunity to vote, so we were, and we were hanging out, and so I drove him out there so he could drop his vote off. And we were talking about the statement that my vote doesn't count. And I said, well, son, one of the things you have to realize is some of these state races, assembly, Senate, some of the local races, mayor, your local city council member, maybe not in Los Angeles, but in the suburb, for example, your city council member in West Covina, for example, or Azusa in the Los Angeles area, or out here where I live in La Mesa or El Cajon or Carlsbad, some of those races are won by less than 10 votes sometimes. I mean, 5, 10, 7, 15 votes can swing those suckers one way or the other. And so, you may feel that your vote doesn't count when it's diluted to the point where you're voting and there are millions and millions of other people voting for the same thing. But that's not an excuse to not go out and vote, because Tip O'Neill was exactly right. All politics are local, and where you can have the most profound effect on politics is in your local elections, your local judges, your local city council member, your local mayor, and in your state legislature in particular is a big deal because a lot of those districts are fairly small.
And I want to put it in really big perspective for people, because I think a lot of people don't understand this. It's why CRP has put so much money in our grassroots and our local chapter programs and developing those. And each of them have a chair that works with me on this stuff. Is if you go back to, the Cooley Hoover race up in the 7th district, that is literally flipping a vote per neighborhood. That's how razor close it is. So you look at your average neighborhood, and if I ask you, Joel, is it possible for you to walk out and get somebody that either A, didn't vote, or B, did to vote differently? You're going to say, sure. Out of a whole neighborhood, that's a cakewalk. That's easy.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of these races are coming. But here's the deception. It doesn't matter if it's the Chronicle, the Times, Union Tribune, the Bee, whatever major newspaper, it's red or blue. So person optically looks at that map and goes, oh, Joe, so much blue, and I'm like,
or so much red, depending on which side you're on, right?
And I'm looking at people going, do you realize in many of those cases, this is one vote a neighborhood? This isn't we got decimated. This is so razor close. Oh, and did you look at the other thing? Like in a couple of those races, and I was going to pull it up here, but let's look down in your neck of the woods. Christy Bruce Lane is currently beating the incumbent who is going for, I think, his 8th or 9th term, Brian Manshine. Christy Bruce Lane.
Which we would very much like to retire Brian Manshine.
Christy Bruce Lane is currently ahead. And so it looks like once it's voted, if things hold, she'll win. $700,000 campaign on her side. Manshine, $2.1 million. That's a 3-to-1 spread. And that race right now, let me see if I can find the most up-to-date, unofficial. Everything has been partially reported as of 9:44 this morning. They're now doing the provisional ballots and the vote by mail ballots to tally. But right now, she's up by 615 votes after having been outspent.
But listen to the number, 615.
Yeah.
We're talking about a race that can be won with just, like I said, just a very, very small number of votes. And so if you get, a bunch of people who figure their vote doesn't count and they don't vote, that can swing that election one way or the other.
So hypothetically...
And I'm just going to say this, it often does.
Right. And hypothetically, regardless of which candidate comes out at the end for this argument, neither one has a mandate. Neither one was a sweeping victory, which is the other thing those maps that are either blue or red do not show. And this is where the voter locally has to know this stuff, because then they can look confidently at either side, whatever the color is, and say, you barely got there, so don't act like you're all down in a bag of chips, because we can put pressure on you. Because you know what nobody else but people like me realized this morning? Welcome to the 24 election, because it started at 6 a.m. this morning.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, it did. Yeah, it sure did. 2024 started.
And don't think for a moment, regardless of who the candidate that wins in the 30 or 76 district is, that I'm not going to be in their office reminding them that we're watching them, reminding them of the pressure to give them the vote the way we want them to vote on issues, because you need us if you want to stay there.
How did we do, as we start looking at legislature, did we make any headway in the Assembly or the Senate?
So it's probably going to be a week for us to really comment on that. I talked to a couple of my other peers this morning who were going away for vacation, because they're like, I'll look at this in a week, to be honest.
Yeah.
Sam was one of those. Bye.
Right.
And one of the things that we've talked about is there are two things. Did we pick up a bunch of Republican seats? That's yet to be seen. I don't think we suffered any losses, but on the Democratic side, and this is like you trying to tell people, there is a change in the makeup of who the Democrats are. It moved back more towards center with some of those candidates that ran and won. So the constant slide left, that got halted, and we got some people that stayed, obviously in those positions, even on the federal level like Schiff. But we have a lot of other people that are more centrist, like Adam Gray, who are not to the far left, are not doing the crazy stuff, and who are like, guys, you went the wrong direction. You need to come back this direction. And that means those are people that you can actually have conversations with that will either not vote or will vote with us. And so while on paper, there was even a couple of the LA Times this morning said, they might still have a majority, but they don't have a majority on every issue. And there's got to be a lot more wrangling for votes than we've had over like the past 6 years. So I see a lot of push. Plus, I want to go to the governor's race for a moment, if we could, just to talk about sheer numbers. So, one of the things I've noticed in a couple of your previous talks with myself and Sam is when we talk about the gun vote, and we talk about, depending on if you're being ultra conservative, 7.5 to 8 million voters. If you're listening to DOJ and some others, that could be as high as 10. But let's go with 8. Let's just go with 8. In fact, I'm gonna be really weird. I'm gonna go with 7, because I'm gonna say everybody's moved out of the state was a card-carrying gun owner. Don't know that for a fact, because we know a lot of people from the Bay Area that don't own guns have moved out. But let's just go with it. If you look at the state election right now, it is amazing to me, because people aren't realizing that, and I'll use the governor's races, and we'll go to California. And when you look at it, it's dark blue. It says 57.8% of the vote against Brian Dahle, who had 42.1. So first thing I want to say is, all right, Newsom won. No shock there. And by the way, Newsom won with 3.1 million votes in a state that has 38 million people.
And how much? And here's the next question: how much money was spent on each side?
Dahle spent next to nothing.
I know.
And Dahle, literally, he's at 2.3. Newsom should easily be, and I expected it honestly, to be 3-1 votes over Dahle, because Dahle ran an okay campaign.
You're being very kind.
Yes, I am.
He ran a terrible campaign.
And against a terrible, to use your words, campaign that was somewhat, I think, fair to say, lackluster, the governor didn't outpace him 3 or 4 to 1 like a lot of people said he would be.
Not even 2 to 1.
Yeah. So, but the big point, we know that the ones that voted for Dolly were not all gun owners. Like, I'm not going to buy that the only people that voted for him were gun owners.
No.
So here's my point. Statistically, looking at this across the board, probably 1 in 10 gun owners voted. And that's me being very kind, because it's probably less than that.
So you're thinking only 10% gun owners voted, or are you thinking only 10% gun owners voted as single-issue voters?
No, voted at all.
Wow. And what leads you to that conclusion?
Because it's less than 1 in 4 people voted. So if you do the percentages of us to get to the population that's able to vote, it comes out to be about 1 in 10. Now, my point is, if 30%, not even looking for a third, then go to 33, Joel. If 30% of 7 million people voted, that's 2 million votes.
Yeah.
That flips the governor election.
Yeah, and I think that's the part that people don't realize. So you're talking about in a midterm election, when gas prices are through the ceiling, when the price of everything is through the ceiling, when California's crazy politics make it more expensive to be here than to be in my other home state of Arizona, for example, which is right next door. My wife was just recently in Yuma, and she texted me, gas is $3.70 some odd cents. Okay, so and even that was high, because I remember when it was $1 something over there just not too long ago. You're telling me that less than, not equal to, less than 25% of the eligible voters in the state of California actually voted. Less than 25%. So we might be 22%. We might be 20%. We might be.
That number may come up, because right now, including Fox News, is reporting about 42% of the vote actually being counted. So those numbers may change. But as where we sit this morning, that's what it's looking like.
So if you're watching this and you fall into the category of one of the folks that didn't vote, no judgment. I'm not beating you up here. But I think it's important for you to realize that your vote does count, and your vote counts a lot, because I voted.
Same here.
My son voted. My kids voted. My wife voted. Guess what? Because even if we said 25%, 1 in 4, that means each one of us that cast one vote actually cast 4. Because 3 other people didn't bother.
Right.
So this is super important for us to realize, I think, as we look at these elections, that if we, rather than crying into our beer, I love beer as well as the next guy, don't get me wrong, rather than crying into my beer, or crying into my Irish whiskey, or whatever, crying into my coffee this morning, it's not, the lesson has got to be, what can we learn from what has occurred, and what can we do differently next time to make sure that we do a better job of winning? Well, one thing we can do next time, honestly, is vote, because all the emotional stuff that says our vote doesn't count is baloney. If we look at it and go, this statistically, my vote doesn't count, keeps 3 out of 4 people from voting, and that's why their vote doesn't count. So I'm just going to say that my vote counted because I cast it. Mm-hmm. And someone's vote didn't count if they didn't.
But that's where I'm going to argue with you.
Go ahead.
Because it does count, and it counts twice.
The problem is it counts the other way. Yeah. Right.
Not voting counts for the other side, because remember, that's part of my job, to keep people from voting.
The other people from voting.
Yeah,
right.
At the federal and state levels with politicians. But the second way this counts.
Yeah, clarify that, please. Your job is to say it again, because people are going to take that wrong. I'm going to tell you that right now.
My job's not to prevent people from voting at the polls. My job is to encourage people to become apathetic enough in the legislature not to vote.
For the wrong. Okay, got it. All right. Anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry. Now that we've just done that, dodged a bullet. Okay.
But the other way that this works against us when we don't vote is when somebody like myself, Sam, or the other people go to lobby for your Second Amendment rights. This is what we hear. Well, if your people really believe that,
they'd vote.
They'd vote. And they didn't vote, which means, and this is what's going to tick the Second Amendment community off. I didn't say this, but I remember when Weiner up in the Assembly said this. Most gun owners are with us. That's why they don't support you at the polls.
Oh.
Yeah. And then it's those same people that call Sam up, call Gun Owners of California, CRPA, why you guys lax? Why you asleep? Are the people on social media? Why aren't you fighting harder? California's, it's going to be a lost cause if you don't get up and vote. And this is why I started off where I did with the local city election, because you made a good point earlier, Joel, here in California. I look at this because I'm engaged in this arena all the time. So, for example, Kim Carr just ran for state senate. Where did Kim Carr come from? Huntington Beach City Council. So for those of you that sit at the local election, well, why would I care about city council? The water board. Because that's your next assembly, state senator, and congressperson. That's where they come from. They run for those positions, get name recognition, get notice, get on speaking tours, because now they're a city council member, they're part of the board of supervisors, board of equalization, the water board, whatever that board may be. And then they go hit all the local community groups to talk to them to build up for the next election. And that's why I said, literally this morning, believe me, there's some staff that are like running around taking down signs to abide by the law. But there's a lot of staff going, okay, what do we want to come out with to make a name for ourselves? So this is easier 18 months down the road.
Well, I want to come back to the vote doesn't count very briefly. I'm just looking up here for my town, okay? Mm-hmm. My mayor is a pro-gun, pro-Second Amendment conservative mayor. I love the guy. He's been on my show. My city councilman, because the city is split up, I live in a smaller city, but it's split up into areas, and my city councilman is the same way. So I'm looking at local elections, right? My mayor actually had a very liberal, liberal's probably the wrong word, because there's a lot of liberals who aren't cuckoo, but there's a lot of progressives who are completely whacked. Had a very progressive sort of socialist person running up against him. He won with 71.6% of the vote. He won re-election. This is a local election. Now, here's the vote totals, okay? Total vote is 10,500 votes. Mm-hmm. The city is about 100,000 people. Figure, with kids and whatever, however, maybe there's 80,000 or what are eligible voters. And out of that, there were 10,000 votes cast. My city councilman, whom I love, he's a great guy, he won with a little over 3,105 votes total in that race. 3,000 votes. The numbers are so astronomically stupid small that, your vote means a lot. And again, and I've said this, golly, I get so tired of beating this drum, but I think I got to beat it again. In your local elections and in your state elections, your vote means a ton. Look at what's happening in Arizona right now with the battle between Kari Lake and Katie Hobbs. Now, I want Kari Lake to win, but I don't vote in Arizona. I vote in California. Otherwise, I'd have voted for her. But this morning when I looked, it was still kind of neck and neck, and it's looking like Katie Hobbs was ahead a little bit. Now, which way it's going to go after all the votes are counted, I don't know. But that shouldn't even be a contest, honestly, but it is. And that means that every vote counts. So we've beat the drum enough. How did we do with sheriffs? Did we win anything where sheriffs are concerned?
We're still counting on those, and most of the sheriff's races were done in the primary. There are 5 outstanding. It does not look like Villanueva is going to win where we stand right now, but there's still a lot of votes to be counted. So, what we're going to have to see. Same thing with the LA City Council or mayor race is really close. Caruso is, let me just double check here. So as of this point, Caruso is still up a bit, but again, that's going to be really, really difficult. And going back to your point, like even in Huntington Beach where I live, that's a city of a little over 200,000. It looks like about 45,000 people voted. So it's about, again, 1 in 4.
What is, have you looked at the federal races at all? The only one I've looked at, obviously, is Kerry Lakes and the Mark Kelly Masters race, because those are important to me, because my wife and I are Calazones, sort of. So those are important to us, but I haven't really looked at the other ones. Have you?
So first thing I wanted to look at was governor races. And the reason I like to look at governor races nationwide is because governors tend to set the tone. You can look at, like, had Brian Kemp barely won in Georgia, then the Herschel Walker race probably wouldn't have been close for Herschel, because governors can tend to help carry the people running for Senate and other things by what's going on with them. And so, looking at the Kemp race, already declared the winner, got 53%. Most of us are hoping for 54, because that probably would have carried Herschel Walker to that critical 50%. But that race could very easily in Georgia right now. That's one of the key races, obviously for the Senate. And looking at it right now, Warnock is at 49.4. Walker's at 48.5. It's about 30,000 votes separated, which Oliver, who took 81,000 as the Libertarian of those votes, it's a toss-up where those votes go, but neither one have achieved 50%, which means it will be a runoff election between the two of them.
Well, I'm a Libertarian, so I, by heart and practice and everything else, so I suspect that they probably would go to Herschel Walker, but who knows? I mean,
right. But the fact that you've got Kemp having won, that should help Walker in a runoff.
I would think a lot, yeah. And then the other thing is that if in a runoff, you've got very few races to focus on in a runoff, where right now we've got races all over the planet, so money is split all over the place.
Right.
Whereas a lot of money will be poured into that race to help Herschel Walker, because there aren't going to be that many races to focus on at the time.
And I had a talk with somebody that's working on the ground pretty high up that you and I both know, but it's about 11,000 votes right now between Hobbs and Lake. But what the important thing was, last night I finally called it quits around midnight, and that was almost still a 5 percentage point difference.
Yeah.
Now it's less than half a percentage point difference. And there's a couple other interesting facts. So you've got, like, California is a very interesting state. You got some counties that will start counting ballots, and then others that won't count the mail-in ballots, absentee ballots, things like that, until after election day polls close. So Arizona counts a lot of their ballots as they're coming in, leading up to election day. So a lot of the 33% or 34% roughly votes, the vast majority of those are election day votes. They're still being counted. So this could make this very interesting. They're not all centered like in Maricopa. They're centered throughout the state. So that's why this race is being watched at this point, not just because of the two players, but because election day votes.
So if the majority of the votes left are coming out of Maricopa County, that's concerning for Kerry Lake. But if they're spread around the state, then I suspect that Kerry Lake's got a very good chance of winning.
Which is why I thought her speech, the last speech I got to hear of hers, was pretty good. Like, this isn't over till it's over.
She's very impressive. She's very impressive.
Let's hold the line. But again, if you look at how much the DNC poured into Hobbs on a governor's race, and you're looking at less than 11,000 votes at this point, that's a race that still, with this much of the vote out, could go either way.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, God bless her, Kerry Lake has been an ever-ready bunny. I mean, she has been everywhere. She's been on every interview show. She's been in every square inch of Arizona. She has talked to everybody. She's shown up to debates and debated an empty podium because Hobbs didn't show up. I mean, she is an ever-ready bunny. So that gets back down to, again, retail politics as opposed to just throwing money at it. So credit to her. I do hope, and thinking good thoughts. I don't know if that means anything, but I'm hoping for her victory there, and then Masters as well. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and to the people that are depressed, I get why people do. There's a lot of hyperbolic stuff that comes out by people on various channels, from social media to the news, not to mention at the coffee shop.
Not on GunGuyTV. We try not to be hyperbolic. We try to bring you stuff that actually means something. Thank you very much. But
yes, no,
there
thank you. That wasn't meant towards you. No, but
there's enough hyperbole out there. We don't need to contribute to it.
But let me frame something from a historical perspective. Sure. Ronald Reagan did not get elected the first time he ran for president or governor. Neither did Nixon, who are known as two strong Californian Republicans. Whether you love them, hate them is not my point. Round one, they were not victorious. Nixon, I have a copy of it in a collection because I kept it because I think it's funny. But, the death of Richard Nixon's political career by Newsweek. And it was like, it's over. He's never did. Well, that wasn't true. Ronald Reagan should go back to acting. Ronald Reagan became for these people who are close, so let's just say hypothetically Lake doesn't win. Lake is so positioned for victory in the next thing she runs for, it's not funny. She's not an unknown. She's a nationally known person. She's going to be able to draw resources and stuff that she wasn't able to previously draw from. So you look at people like Marco Rubio, who handed it to his opposition when people thought Marco was on the way out. You look at some of the other key races throughout the country where J.D. Vance wasn't going to win Ohio. That was a foregone conclusion. Now you have some races like, the Oz Fetterman.
You're right about some of these. They were doomed as far as a lot of people were concerned. They were just doomed. There was no chance. Yeah. Right.
And then you look at like the Fetterman Oz race and you're like, okay, close. What did it? I'm going to blame Oprah on that one personally, because I just think, being a person that builds someone a career up and then coming out less than 48 hours before the vote and saying, I would never elect the person that I chose. You don't have time to recover from that or do anything that. And there's a lot of people that look to Hollywood personalities as idols. And if they say go left, I'm going to go left. If they go right, I'm going to go right. And
I'll never understand it, but you're right. They do. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, and when you look, Fetterman didn't beat him by a bunch, but there's enough of those votes that would have went that way that could be attributed to that alone.
Is there anything we haven't talked about that we should talk about? We're kind of running along.
One of the best lessons I ever learned was I got conned or voluntold, as I like to tell it, like never not show up to a meeting, that I was going to be part of this fishing club. It was my job for 1 year to find 11 speakers. Holy cow. My initial thing was like, well, that shouldn't be that hard. Oh, it was hard. But what I learned was once I connected to some people in the community, there were people that I got to come speak to that little group that later on became council members, and one person became an assembly member. Just doing that, just going to somebody. And there's some people that did not win. They came close, but didn't win. Don't kick them to the curb. Invite them. Say, hey, I'm going to have a barbecue with some friends, or hey, my church is doing this, or my work group is doing this or that. Could you come out and say a few words? Because remember what I said, the 24 election started today. Keep those people in because they almost won. We don't fire a quarterback when he loses at the buzzer because someone got a field goal. We go, okay, we learn from that. We take the playbook and we go back the next game and we win that next game. John Elway didn't always have a good year, and we can go through Peyton Manning, everybody. They've had their good games and bad games. It's now just time to get those players back out on the field, help them brush the crap off of them from the past few weeks, and get them ready for 24. And we can do better. And if we keep that up, we'll win. But if we keep let's moan and groan the day after, we're going to get more of what we've had.
As usual, thank you very much for watching the entire show. I really do appreciate it. Have a great week. Stay in the fight. Never, never, ever, ever, ever quit. Make sure that you're supporting California Rifle and Pistol Association. They do great work here in California. They're also a model for state agencies across the country, and they reach out to a lot of state affiliate organizations and state firearms rights organizations to help them learn how to fight in their own states. Because as I've said many times, what starts in California ends up everywhere else. California either affects or infects the rest of the nation, and we don't want it to affect or infect it in a negative way. So please do support them. And if you'd like like to support me, you're welcome to do that. The best way to do that would be to join GunGuy TV crew. There is a link in the description. Have a great week. Thank you again, and wherever you go, whatever you do, be safe.